Welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today we have back with us our E36. We're going to be doing some more stuff on this, and I actually want to go over everything that I've done to the car because there are some things I did off camera and there are some things that I would like to show how I did. For example, we've got a new intake system over there that I did some modification on. Nothing super special or anything that would need to be shown on camera, but I do want to go over everything. And then today I would also like to do the valve cover gasket and check out the thermostat because we are leaking a little bit of coolant. So I want to make sure it's just the gasket and not the entire thermostat housing. So with that, let's just jump right in. So as everybody can see, the headlights have been completely removed off the car, and in its place we are using these lights here. Now you've seen these before because they were on the channel on another E36. We just had these in those other headlights just for fun, just playing around with it. But in this car, we actually have to have them there. So there's this one here and this one here. These are actually set up to be highs and lows, and we are thinking about either mounting them like this or mounting them like that. We're not quite sure yet. And on this side, we have a quick disconnect. You can just get these from O'Reilly for just a couple bucks a piece. So that's how those are hooked up. We do not have turn signals yet, but we are going to be doing turn signals. I think David's got some on order. So we're thinking maybe mounting them here or something that can be seen from the side as well. So the main theme of this car is to basically get as much weight off the vehicle and get as much power out of it as we can without spending very much money. So one of the things that we did was we removed the fan that's in here, the clutch fan, because that takes more energy to run than an electric fan. And then what I did was I took the AC fan that sits in front of the AC condenser. We removed the AC condenser and I moved that fan back, and I actually have a high and low toggle switch on the inside of the car. We'll go over that in a little bit when we get in there. Next, I want to go over to our intake system and talk about that a little bit. So here is our new intake system. Since there's no hood here anymore, we would like to have the intake kind of stick up a little bit, so we're staying away from the engine instead of putting it down into this area here. So that's kind of why the bend is on here. This is a Spectre system from O'Reilly, and before anybody gets all upset that, oh, it's not the best, yeah, whatever. It is kind of silly that they painted this chrome even though it's actually just plastic. I would have rather just had it be black plastic because I don't really care, but this whole system right here was far cheaper than anything that we could find online, and especially cheaper than the actual performance intakes for the 36. On the left hand side of the intake you can see a shield there. This is a heat shield that I built out of scrap metal. And that's why there's holes in this, because it was being used for something else and it's just been sitting around for a long time. So I hammered it flat, put a 90-degree on it so we can mount it down there at the bottom of the engine bay. This comes up right here so that it doesn't hit the radiator. And then I did have to do a little bit of a notch right there to avoid the hose. And then it goes over and up again to keep all of the heat away from this system here. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing about the holes. I can't imagine this actually would change very much. This is obviously better than having just nothing sitting there, but this didn't take me very long to make. Just flatten a piece of metal. I made one out of cardboard originally, and then I made it out of metal. So this was just scrap metal that was sitting around. I'll paint it up so that we're not getting anything rusted. And yeah, so that was pretty easy to make, pretty cool to do. And I've had a system like this before. We had it on our Red 330 where we did an intake on that car. So that was actually my piece that I sold to my buddy, but I wanted to do another one without paying for one. So I got some scrap metal, and this is the one that I ended up making. Before we move into the car, I want to talk about the secondary air pump delete. Now we've done one of these before and I used a piece of steel, and I'm not sure why we didn't use these scraps of aluminum that I've got sitting around. Aluminum's a lot better, it doesn't rust. And aluminum is actually what the manufacturers make the secondary air pump deletes out of. So this again is really simple to do. This is probably one of the projects I'll be doing today, is making a secondary vacuum pump. So I'm saving about $15 or $20 doing this myself. And like I said, I just had this sitting around in my shed. The other thing that you can see over here on the far left is that the ECU is sitting out. That's because this has been immobilized and we're gonna have to send the ECU out to get a tune on it, which kind of sucks, but they're not as expensive as I was thinking. And while it is out, we'll be getting an engine tune to raise the rev limiter, and maybe we'll get some burbles and stuff out of the exhaust, some other cool things, but that will get rid of our EWS system, which will essentially remove the security system from this car. Inside we have our new seating arrangement. Obviously I'm gonna have to fix that. We'll probably be doing racing seats eventually, but as I keep saying, this is trying to keep the car very budget. So right now we're just keeping the driver's seat You can also see that the heater core has been removed and that there is a little toggle switch panel just sitting right here. The only toggle we've got on there right now is that fan switch. Up is high, down is low, middle is in the off position. And then we are going to be doing a new steering wheel, but again, for right now, we're just going to be leaving the stock one on there. And if we're lucky, the stock steering wheel will actually sell for enough for us to get a cheap steering wheel with a NRG hub adapter to get a 6-bolt steering wheel onto that. The plastic faceplate on this instrument cluster was actually scratched quite a bit, so I pulled that out of the car and cleaned it up really good with some super fine scratch remover that's meant for paint and then some wax. And as long as you're careful, you can actually polish plastic, but you've got to be super careful. I don't even want to show what I did on my channel because I don't want to be responsible for anybody messing up their plastics, because if you mess up plastic really bad, it can take a lot of work to get back out of it, and it's very easy to mess up on something like that. So I did that off camera. You can also see that the needles are blue. Most of the time we do them red, but I had a blue Sharpie marker sitting around, so that's just kind of a fun little project to do. If you're looking for something to change your instrument clusters, you can just pull out a red Sharpie or blue, whatever color you want to do, pull your instrument cluster out and just draw on the top of the needles, not on the sides, just on the top of them. This little shelf here in the back where the convertible top used to sit when it was in the down position has actually been super useful. I cleaned it out really well so that I could put tools and gloves and parts back here as storage. I'm not sure if we're actually going to be cutting this out or not, but for right now I've just been using it as essentially a shelf. And the other thing that I want to say, and can't remember if I had said this in other videos, but you want to keep all of your deluxe mix nuts. You want to keep all of the nuts and bolts off of your vehicle when you're doing something like this, because you never know when you're going to use them again. And then I've got a second container here that I've been putting some other parts in that are a little bit bigger that won't fit into this one by itself. Here's our valve cover gasket that we have. Again, I think I'd said this before, but we got this from ECS Tuning on accident, and they told us to just keep it because the gaskets aren't worth shipping back and forth. So they told me to just hold on to it. So that's pretty cool that we've actually got one for the car on accident. So that worked out pretty well for us. So as this car is literally the epitome of function over form, we don't care what it looks like as long as it's fast. This is something that you'll see around the car until we decide to change the color. There was a lot of rust on the car, so I took a wire wheel and a bunch of sandpaper and have been going around all the spots and putting some rust reformer spray on it so that it stops rusting, hopefully. I ran out of paint, so I only did a couple spots in the back here, but there's a whole bunch of spots in the front of the car. We have a lot of rust, so we're gonna be cleaning that up as we go along and just making sure that our body doesn't rust before we get a chance to cut where we wanna cut when we decide to take off more of these panels and add a cage to it. The next couple of things we're gonna be doing to the car is actually taking off the power steering. I have a Condor Racing, I think it's Condor or something. I'll have the link to that piece in the description, but I've got that on its way. That helps me delete the power steering. What that does is it allows fluid to flow back and forth on the rack, because if you just cap them off when you turn the car, you'll blow out the seals. The rack still needs lubricant even though you're not running power steering anymore. So I'm gonna be removing the thermostat, see if there's anything there that needs to be replaced, removing the valve cover, and I want to show everybody what the inside of the engine looks like because I don't know. I actually haven't even popped the cap to see if it's very dirty. If it's very dirty, we might test one of our oils and see how well it cleans it out, and then I will be building that secondary air pump delete. I will be doing some of this on camera, and I will be stopping and talking about the important things as I go along these couple of projects. So I'm going to wrap up the video here right here, guys. There's not really much else going on here that needs to be shown other than I'm going to remove the thermostat and see what is causing it to leak. It's leaking straight down the engine block. Normally that is the thermostat housing gasket like we stated earlier, but I do want to talk about this real quick. So this actually isn't very dirty, but you can see up here there's a lot of buildup. This is supposed to not necessarily be this color exactly, but it's supposed to be a lot cleaner than this. This is pretty black. So we might be doing another oil test where we put some oil in here and see how well some of those higher detergent oils clean up an engine. You can see here there's carbon buildup. That's pretty obvious. So this would be something that would be pretty straightforward. Couldn't really argue with how well an oil cleans that up. So I'm actually going to be putting the valve cover back on this car. This car is a lot easier to get the valve cover off and on because there's no hood getting in your way. And the piece that runs along here for the 46 isn't on this car. So even though I did have to use some bungee cords to pull back that wire harness, this was pretty easy to put back together. Speaking of the valve cover, that was probably one of the worst valve covers I've ever done when it comes to actually pulling the old one out. I spent probably a good 30 minutes pulling these little pieces out here. It was just super hard, super brittle. It's not supposed to be anything like that. I'm thinking, based on my past experience, that that probably was the original valve cover gasket to the car. Car's got 180,000 miles on it. I did a car at one point that had 165,000 miles on it that had the original valve cover gasket, and it looked very similar, but it wasn't quite that bad. This one was so bad that even this big gasket that runs around the outside was snapping at these points right here as I was pulling it off. So I'm glad that that one fits. I'm glad that that one came to us on accident, and I actually got that one for free. So that works out really well for us. I'm very happy with our delete plate, the way that turned out. I like the aluminum look a lot better than when we did the steel, and this won't rust. That was actually pretty fun to do. I enjoyed making that little piece there. So very happy with the projects that are going on today. So I hope everybody enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. Thanks to all my recent Patreons. If you are interested in my Patreon, the link is in the description below. Check that out for sure, and we will see everybody in the next video.